Anirban, what I can say is there is uncertainty in the air, and Kashmir is witnessing something we haven't seen for last 3 decades.
That's my colleague and ET's Jammu and Kashmir correspondent, Hakeem Irfan Rashid.
And for the past 2 years, the weather has also gone a little. The clouds of war are hovering over the region. People have heard sirens, and there are sighs all around. There is uncertainty as people are looking at possible escalation of violence. We have already seen huge shelling and artillery exchange along the line of control. There were drones in the air. We have seen the jets hovering in the skies in the middle of the night. Both Jammu and Kashmir witnessed blackouts for several hours last night. So essentially, the atmosphere is of uncertainty, of fear, and of looking at that abyss from where people think that if it escalates, nobody can come back.
On Wednesday, May 7th, way past midnight, India launched a 23-minute precision strike targeting 9 sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. The sites were the fostering and festering grounds for 2 of the deadliest terror organizations in the world, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. India's Rafale jets shot through the night, dropping SCALP and HAMMER missiles at the targets. It was as if India was avenging not just the dastardly Pahalgam terrorist attacks, but every terror act that had happened on its soil after the Kargil War of 1999. Red Fort, the Parliament, Mumbai train blasts, Pathankot, Uri, Pulwama. Government sources have said that more than 100 militants were killed. Pakistan alleged civilian deaths. It launched a retaliatory attack with drones and missiles, reportedly targeting as many as 15 Indian cities in the north. The Indian government has said that all the attacks were successfully intercepted, foiled. In retaliation, India reached inside Pakistan's borders, neutralizing an air defense radar in Lahore and also launching offensives at sites in Sialkot and Islamabad. So as India takes the fight deeper into Pakistan than it ever has, we ask whether this shift from punitive to preemptive warfare is going to become its mainstay. We also ask how multiple red lines that exist between civilians, terrorists and soldiers are fast blurring, fast dissolving. How long a conflict can Pakistan survive? Can China's support, limited now to supplying weapons, become a more tangible, deeper concern? And most critically, what are the paths to de-escalation? Listen on, it's Thursday, the 10th of May. I'm Anirban Chaudhary, and this is the Morning Brief. For people in Jammu and Kashmir, where normalcy had returned after years with tourism, business, and elections, life has again come to a standstill. For many, it's back to the late 90s. Here's Irfan.
The only highway that connects Kashmir with the rest of India is closed because of the mudslides and landslides, and the airports are closed, the schools are closed, the children are shut inside their homes. So essentially, we are in a small place, locked from all the sides, looking at now at a very dark future.
I hope you're safe.
Yes. I am in Srinagar right now, but when we travel to the border areas, it's a little difficult because there is an uncertainty as shelling is going on, and the shells have come several kilometers inside the line of control. So when we travel to the border areas, Srinagar, as of now, we have witnessed a blackout, but while we travel to the border areas, the situation there is much worse.
Irfan, tell me, what is the government doing to make sure that civilians are safe?
Yeah, I'll start that over the past couple of days, there has been death of at least 17 civilians and 1 army man. 16 of them were killed in the exchange of fire in Punch of Jammu district, which has seen the images that are coming out of Punch are very disturbing. Twin siblings were killed in the shelling, and then When in Uri of Kashmir, a woman died of splinter injury last night, and my sources in the government were telling me that another young lady, she died of a heart attack because she couldn't what I can say, I mean, bear the shell, even the sounds of the shelling and the sirens on the border. I was talking to a local in Uri just now before recording this episode, and he told me that they haven't witnessed this kind of shelling over the past 30 years, even when the ceasefire was being violated. And when the ceasefire between the two countries is in place, it has gone to shatters along the border, I can tell you. And the government is trying its bit. They have built the bunkers over the past few years, but they are not enough because they have not constructed bunkers at all the places where people can hide in times of emergency. Hospitals have been told to do the emergency drill. The banks have said that they have put the emergency button on, but the operations will remain there. So overall, in this city of sighs and sirens these days, I can tell you, everybody is trying to kind of be hopeful and see that there are better days ahead.
Do people have access to supplies?
Yeah, so this is going to be a problem in coming days if this doesn't open as soon as possible. And there is a long-term tradition in a very problematic and conflict zone like Kashmir. People have this habit of hoarding things. So every household has essential supplies for at least a month or couple of months. So yes, but it's going to be a problem in coming days if the highway doesn't open and the weather doesn't improve along the highway. And of course, the political situation isn't improved.
And I think there are unprecedented restrictions on how people communicate, what they put up on social media, etc.
Yes, yes, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I mean, these are pressing times. People have been, even before the Operation Sindoor, there was a kind of a strict surveillance on who writes what and how do you portray things on social media. For example, I can tell you about an incident we saw some unknown flying object which came down in Wuyan area of Pampore. So anybody who reported on that, or even some locals who had captured that, they have been booked by the police. A few of the journalists, at least two of them, including a female, who had reported directly live from the spot, have been told that they are violating the guidelines that have been issued by the government, and they have been warned. And at least one in the earlier episode before Operation Sindoor, another journalist, very senior journalist who has worked with reputed national and local in the organizations, has been arrested by the government for putting up a picture and writing a long prose over that picture of a damaged house. So he has been arrested and he's in jail right now. So yes, there is a strict surveillance, and government and the law enforcement agencies keep reminding people that they have to be careful what they put on the social media or even on their handles. And even journalists are under a scanner of what they write, how they write. Yeah, that is the larger situation here in unprecedented times here.
Irfan, thank you so much, and please be safe.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Lenman. Thank you.
So, are we really in a state of war? That's the first question I asked my colleague, ET senior editor and defense expert Manu Pabi.
It's a good question. I would not classify this as a war as of now. I do not think it is a war. A war is much bigger. It has much more connotations. I mean, it's difficult to define and put words to it because all of this is very new. But I would say this is cross-border military action. And remember, India and Pakistan have been going through this for a long time. Earlier, this was limited to Jammu and Kashmir over the line of control. We used to have quite frequent cross-border firings, artillery exchanges, even, raids across the border. This time, the big change is this war front has shifted to the larger entire border. So in that manner, it's bigger. But this is for now a cross-border military action by both sides. There are many elements of a hybrid warfare in this, which is now very visible across the world. Elements include cyber attacks, we can talk about that later, information warfare, but we are not at the level in which I would term this as a war.
Understood. Okay, let's talk about what India has been doing and the purpose of it. Who or what has been on India's hit list? And realistically, what have we achieved? I mean, what is the tangible damage on terror outfits that have been fostered in Pakistan for the last several years?
That's a great question, and I'll just take you back a little bit to answer that. If you remember, the first time we did cross-border action publicly was 2016. when we did some limited action on the border. So at that time, there was a terror attack in India on our military personnel, and we responded by taking down terror launch pads on the line of control. So that was the first reaction. In 2019, the Balakot operations were against a terror training camp. So we went up higher a bit on the hierarchy. Launch pads are the smaller targets. Higher target was training camps where terrorists were actually being trained. This time, given the gravity of the attack at Pahalgam, we decided to do much more than that. So we took down terror launch pads, which are on the border. We've taken down terror training camps, which are deeper inside. But most importantly, we have struck the headquarters of the two biggest terror outfits operating out of Pakistan, which target India, LET and the JEM. So the Muridke and Bahawalpur strikes are the most important, in my opinion. What we have done in terms of tangible terms is we have shown to Pakistan that the price they will have to pay for a terror attack in India is now very high.
Right. Just a little bit more on that, this shift from punitive to preemptive combat. Do you think this is going to be a mainstay now, especially from India's side? Also, there are many comparisons, including from the Indian government itself with Israel. There have been references to Israel's Dahiya doctrine. In fact, even in press statements, the government has used Hamas analogies for the attacks from Pakistan's side. How do you read this change in stance and its future?
You picked up a good point on punitive versus preemptive. To be clear, till now we have been doing punitive action. None of this is preemptive. All of these action that we have done are in response to a provocation on our side. I think it is quite possible that we can move up to preemptive action in the coming days or months or years. That is the next level of escalation from our side. Right now, we're only taking down their camps and sites in response to an attack. So I think we could be going into a preemptive mode in the future. That's for the political leadership to decide. On the reference of the Hamas and Gaza conflict, what the government here has been saying is that there are very clear correlations between what happened at Pahalgam and what happened in the strike against Israel from the Gaza Strip. They have 2-3 points. One is done on religious grounds. Secondly, the terrorists selectively shot people, and the kind of speeches they made, the statements they made were very similar to what you would hear the Hamas people saying. And post that, the kind of attacks that Pakistan has done on India. Remember, India only struck terror positions in Pakistan. We did not strike the military. So we were very clear about that. But the Pakistani military chose to hit back on our military. So we are seeing the similarity there that, when Israel would take action against terror groups in Gaza, the Hamas would hit them back, even though it was sort of an elected government. So we are trying to draw a correlation that Pakistan is acting like the Gaza Strip, like Hamas, and that we are trying to defend ourselves. We took down terror targets which were active inside India or trying to propagate terrorism to our side.
Mm-hmm. Do you find it a little disturbing that the lines between civilians and terrorists and the army is blurring faster than ever before?
It is worrying, and it has been worrying for a while. And unfortunately, our neighbor Pakistan has been at the forefront of it. So, starting from the action that they did in Afghanistan against the Russians, there's no distinct line left anymore in Pakistan on between civilians and armed personnel. In India, it's quite different. We are very distinctive on, somebody's an armed forces person or an armed or a non-state actor. But the line in Pakistan has been blurred for a long time. And it is worrying because it presents difficulties in terms of collateral damage. And, you have to be much more careful. But the kind of provocations because of which we've responded were so heavy that this time we had to be prepared to to inflict collateral damage, because on the Pakistani side, remember, this terror attack in Pahalgam is very unique because for the first time tourists were killed. All of them were civilians. So Pakistani-backed terrorist groups cross a red line. So for us, there has been no choice but to now strike back there. And if there is collateral damage, that has to be stomached. I think that's what we are seeing everywhere in the world. We're seeing this in Russia and Ukraine. We're seeing this in what's happening in the Middle East. And I think increasingly so, we will see more and more of this blurring of lines across conflict zones in the world.
Right. It is worrying, of course. But let's come to brass tacks a little bit. You know, the key cornerstones of India's war game this time, and I'm talking to you purely as a defense analyst. Just not. There's been a lot of talk about, of course, its weapons, the hammer and scalp missiles, the Hathi drones, and of course, more recently, and which was on display last night, especially the S-400 air defense systems. That, and in addition to that, what have been the cornerstones of India's, if I may call it, war game?
Yes, yes. So we were very clear on one thing, that we want to strike terror targets inside Pakistan from a standoff distance. So none of our fighter jets crossed over. Over the past 4, 5 years, 6 years, we've acquired weapons which can strike inside Pakistan without any of our assets actually having to cross over, any of our manned assets. So our strikes on Pakistan were clearly defined and done, keeping minimum danger to our personnel undertaking the strikes. Secondly, the element of our strikes were precision strikes. So all of them were targeted. They had very little margin for error, because especially Bahawalpur and Muridke, those camps are in very heavily populated locations deliberately and next to Pakistani army sites. So we had to be very pinpointed with the accuracy of the strikes. The second element of our approach this time is that we will defend against anything if the Pakistanis attack us. And over the past 2 days, you've seen the S-400 in action. This is to ensure that Pakistani drones, aircraft, missiles do not reach us. And I think on both fronts, we have an edge over Pakistan for now, both in terms of quality and quantity. And I can tell you this as a defense analyst, the longer this thing stretches, the worse it's going to get for Pakistan, because they have limited assets to deploy. And of course, our military strength is much, much higher. So in a battle of attrition, it's just a matter of days before the Pakistani military kind of collapses on the technical and equipment front.
What about outside support? Are there looming fears of what role China can play? It's been sort of quiet, apart from statements that have emanated from its government. Whether it will be diplomatic support, military aid, or even direct intervention, are there those fears looming, and how realistic do you think they are?
Pakistan has already received Chinese support. So a lot of these actions that they've taken were used by them utilizing Chinese supplied weapons, which were
Right.
supplied to them at discounted rates. We don't see as of now any direct involvement of the Chinese military, but that is something we have to watch out for. I would, if I were to make an analysis right now, I would say the Chinese may not want to get dragged into what is essentially a fight against terrorism. So I think the Chinese will stay away from overtly supporting it. They can always do a bit of backhand help to the Pakistanis by supplying weapons and things. But frankly, we have much more allies and much more friends in the world to back us up than they do.
Right. What are the realistic pathways to de-escalation?
I mean, that's the question. That's the $1 million question. There are pathways available, and they will involve Pakistan backing off now and saying, okay, claiming a victory. That's the easiest back off for them. For us, I do not see, India backing off till the time that Pakistan keeps provoking us. So for us, it is going to be that if need be, we can prolong this, but we will not back off. We don't want a partial victory over terrorism. We want it to be very clear the costs are going to be high, and any other provocation in terms of another terror attack or a cross-border action is going to be responded to. So frankly, the ball is in Pakistan's court. If they want to get off this conflict, they need to back off, and I think they're already under considerable pressure from the international community and from their own system. Their financial health, as we know, is in a very precarious situation.
Let me end this by, and there is no other way to end this actually. Let me end this by asking you about the alternate scenario, which is that of further escalation. How do you see the next 2-3 weeks panning out?
The escalation path is much more difficult, and the escalation path can go to a full-scale war. Remember, right now it's only cross-border military action. There is no ground troops. There's no invasion by India. There is no crossing the border and taking over areas and positions. So that's the escalation matrix will go up. If it goes up, then we will be forced to witness a ground-based invasion. The naval front opening up. Remember, there's a lot of fake news about Karachi port being destroyed. That's not true, but that's a scenario that can very easily happen. We've done this before. It can be done again. The two countries might flirt at the nuclear threshold. Pakistan's nuclear doctrine is, if the survival of their nation is threatened, they will resort to first use of nuclear weapons. Our theory is we will not use nuclear weapons unless somebody strikes them on us. If escalation is there, we can go up right to that level. There's a third scenario, which I think is the most likely of the three, is that this limited conflict or cross-border action could continue for the coming days, weeks, possibly even months. A prolonged, frozen kind of little action here and there. That's quite a scenario possible, especially if there is fresh provocation of more terror attacks by the Pakistanis, because India has now made it clear that the price to pay for a terror attack emanating from Pakistan is going to be high, and we're not going to back off from that.
Manu, thank you for ending on the least bleak note, and I hope that very little of what you estimated actually happens. But thank you so much for joining us on the Morning Brief.
Thank you. My pleasure.
As of Friday, India had closed 24 airports across its northern and western regions. The Indian Premier League has been suspended. Countries like the UK and the US have issued travel advisories warning against travel to certain regions in India. Civilians living on the Jammu and Kashmir border are being fast evacuated. Those that remain are looking at the skies every night for fire and flares, even as they anticipate the ominous sound of sirens. I'll let Irfan have the last word.
There is a sort of hopelessness, but people are praying. It's Friday today, and people are praying that situation might get better in coming days.
That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by me and sound designed by Amrit Reggie. A new episode of The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. And when there's just too much to say, we come to you more often. Keep listening.